Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give it about one more minute to just make sure any last minute folks trickle in, and then we will get started.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Middlebury. On behalf of the entire college, I want to wish you and welcome you to our community. My name is Smita Rizika, and I have the honor and privilege to serve as the Vice President of Student Affairs. Like your student, I too am going into my first year today, or I should say this year. I'm in week 5. So I too am new to the Middlebury community. But I am thrilled to be here, as I am sure that you and your student is. We know you have lots of questions, and we hope that we can answer some of them today. We are going to be taking questions, but before we do that, we also want to tell you a little bit about the type of work we do. I am here joined by amazing colleagues, many of whom have been working very, very hard the past few months to welcome you and your student to our campus. So with that, I'm going to turn over to one of my colleagues, Amanda Reinhardt, who's going to tell you and walk you through the flow of the program. And welcome again.
Thank you, Smita. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Reinhardt, and I'm the Director of Student Activities and Orientation, and I use she, her pronouns. I have the distinct privilege of moderating today's panel. Before we dive in, I did just want to take a moment to share with you that so many people have been working hard to welcome new students to Middlebury. In particular, we have 4 student interns, Lila Olson, Emma Barrett, Natalie Tran, and Isabella Constantino Kerrigan, who have really put so many hours and are so passionate about making orientation and welcoming your new students in such a positive way. And this team has been led by our Assistant Director of Student Activities, Erin Morrison. And because of that team's work, I feel so confident that the new students will have access to all the resources that Middlebury has, and that new students will be supported as they enter this community. So thank you very much to that team and many other campus partners. So on to the panel, the big show, why we're here. I just wanted to give you an overview of how this event will run. We will be having a few individuals in particular give you a brief overview of some broader areas and provide information that we think will be helpful to you all. And then after that, we'll open it up for questions. And at that point, you may hear from others on the call who might have more detailed information about your specific questions. So as an example, you're going to hear from our Dean of Students, Derek Doucette, and Amy Morseman, our Director of First Year Seminars, about student life sort of broadly speaking and academics broadly speaking, but then we'll also ask our other colleagues to chime in for the really specific questions about things like, is there a light in my room, or do I need to bring curtains? You know, some of those nitty gritty questions that we know sometimes folks have. So during this panel, please use the Q&A function. We have individuals who are reviewing questions on the back end, and so they might be answering your question in the chat, or there might be some questions that we answer live by our different panelists. So if you see a question that you are like, oh yes, I would also like to know the answer to that question, please be sure to upvote so that we can try to answer people's most pressing questions and questions that are curious for many people. And so again, you might see your question answered in the Q&A function in the future, or it might be here live. So with that, I'm just gonna check in. I think we'll be turning off the chat function for a bit. So again, if you can just use the Q&A, and then I'm also going to pass it to my colleague, Derek Doucette, to start us off.
Thanks, Amanda, and thanks to your entire team for all the work you've done to get us to this exciting point. In the run-up to the semester, we really appreciate it. My name is Derek Doucette, and I serve as Dean of Students. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm starting my 18th year at Middlebury. Kind of hard to believe for me, but here I am, and I'm excited to do it. I oversee a portfolio of student affairs offices, including the Office of Student Activities and Orientation, the Office of Residence Life, which also includes housing, and the Office of the Student Life Deans. I also collaborate closely with my academic affairs colleagues, including Amy Morseman, from whom you'll hear a bit more about first year seminar and academics in general in a few minutes, and again tomorrow night in the academic support panel, I believe. And I'm going to take just a few minutes to tell you a few bits and pieces of particular interest to this audience about those offices. First, you know something about student activities already. They're the folks who have brought you orientation, so you've interacted with them a great deal, and you will continue to do so in the coming days. Perhaps you've attended virtual events, and soon you will get to meet them in person. But they have other responsibilities as well. And of particular interest is that they oversee nearly 200 student organizations that represent interests from political activism to performing arts to outdoor pursuits, essentially you name it, and they probably have a student organization that is focused on it. And if they don't, then they're the people who can help you begin a new student organization when you get here, although I would encourage you to wait a little while before you jump in at that level. You're going to have plenty to do when you arrive. We also have representatives from the Office of Residential Life here today. I know that Associate Dean of Students for Residential Life, AJ Place, has joined us, and he'll be able to answer some of the detailed questions that you may have. Residential Life also oversees housing, which is always an area of keen interest to first years and all other students, but that's not all they do. They also have 6 master's level live on campus professionals referred to as residence directors who live out there in and among the students. In the case of first year students, we have Holly Angie and Kirsten, who will be supervising a staff of student res life staff as well. These student res life staff in first year halls are referred to as first year counselors, and they live right there on the floors with you, the incoming first year students, and their sources of support, sources of information. You'll hear lots from them in the coming days during orientation and beyond. And then finally, I want to touch briefly on the student life deans that are here with us. I know senior student life dean, I think senior student life dean Jennifer Sellers is here, and I know student life dean Matt Longman has joined us. In a campus that is chock full of sources of support for students, the student life deans should be among your first calls and your most important sources of support. They can provide you with information and support around social concerns, academic concerns, navigating college policy, or they can just be a friendly and informative and wise ear to sit and bounce ideas off of and have conversations with. So I would really encourage you to get to know your student life dean. Each of you has been assigned to one with whom you'll work for all 4 years of your time at Middlebury. So they're invaluable sources of support. And one of the key offices to which they might refer you, if the circumstances warrant it, is our Center for Health and Wellness. And so I think with that, I will pass it on to the Executive Director for our Center of Health and Wellness, Barbara McCall.
Thank you so much, Derek. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. My name is Barbara McCall. I use she, her pronouns. I'm starting my 9th year at Middlebury, and I'm pleased to serve as the Executive Director, as Derek said, of our Center for Health and Wellness. I know that student health is top of mind for so many of us these days, for parents, families, students, and staff and faculty. And so I'm really pleased to share with you some information about our student health focused offices. We provide services to students at no additional cost and know that student health and well-being is a critical component of our community and of our students' academic success. I oversee 4 student health focused offices, including health services, which provides care to our students, including related to COVID-19, counseling, which offers same-day appointments for students to talk about what's going on with them in the here and now. They also offer groups and workshops. Our health and wellness educators, who provide programming in the residence halls out where students are living and learning on a number of important topics, including alcohol and other substances, violence prevention and advocacy, as well as mental health promotion and things like stress management, coping skills, talking about cold, flu, and certainly COVID-19 education. Also in our team is sports medicine, who provide injury prevention and response to our athletes to make sure that they are performing athletically as best they can as well. We also know that health needs come up outside of business hours. And so in addition to our wonderful staff across all 4 offices, we also offer a 24/7 telehealth service called MidTelehealth. This provides both on-demand and scheduled medical, mental health, and health coaching appointments for students. Whether they are on campus, traveling for the weekend, or over a break, we want to make sure that all of our students have access to the medical and mental health support and services that they need. We've got representatives from those offices on the webinar tonight, which is great to answer your questions, and we look forward to welcoming your students to campus soon. To continue some conversation about health, it's my pleasure to turn things over to Dr. Mark Peluso, our Chief Health Officer and college physician, to talk a little bit more about our COVID-19 approach here at Middlebury.
Thanks, Barbara. I know COVID-19 is on the minds of many people, and especially as we navigate our way through this Delta variant surge. And what I can share is that even though Delta community transmission of COVID-19 in the US is thought to be very high across the United States, including parts of Vermont, Addison County is actually trending downward and is now no longer in the high range, but in the substantial range. So it's still significant, but the trend is in a favorable direction. I know that in June, we were very excited to see the results of the vaccination, and that the virus was not causing many problems. In fact, Addison County only saw 6 cases in June. In July, things started ticking up and we saw 35 cases, and in August, we had 130 cases. So we watched the case counts closely. We closely track, and anyone on any student or parent can look at the Vermont Department of Health COVID dashboard, and it will show you the 14-day case count, which up until a few weeks ago was around 85 for Addison County. It's now down to 60 as of today, which is good news. That's a favorable trend. We work closely with the Department of Health leadership, including the health commissioner and state epidemiologist, and they're very happy to continually remind us that Vermont's the highest vaccinated state in the country. And Addison County is over 70% of Addison County residents are fully vaccinated, meaning they've 2 weeks past their last dose of vaccine. So cases are trending downward in Addison County, and we have a highly vaccinated population. The preliminary numbers on our students will indicate that 100% of students are compliant with our vaccine mandate. And we have less, by the time we get through arrivals, as we work through some international students arriving that couldn't get vaccine in their home country because it just wasn't available, and they'll get vaccinated as soon as they arrive. We'll be down to less than 1% of students who will not have been vaccinated for approved reasons, such as medical or religious exemptions. That number correlates also with the number of students that have religious or medical exemptions for other vaccines like the measles, mumps, varicella, other vaccines that are required by the state of Vermont. So I think that's good news. We're going to have a very highly vaccinated campus. I'll just quickly touch on our main mitigation measures, which are different than what we did last year. And the main mitigation measure is vaccination. We're also, because we're in an area of sustained community transmission, the CDC recommends that we have indoor face coverings, so that students will start their college experience, unfortunately, having to wear face coverings indoors. We hope that's we don't have to do that throughout the entire semester, but that's where we're starting. We're doing some pre-arrival COVID testing. We're asking students to get tested 3 days before they arrive on campus. We have had some early arrivals test positive at home and not come to campus, so that's worked well. And they'll do their 10-day isolation and have to travel later. The CDC does not want people traveling if they have a positive COVID test. We are doing some arrival testing for unvaccinated students, either domestic or international. Again, there's not many students that fall into that category. And also the CDC recommends testing international arrivals. So we're doing that as well. Anyone, they don't have to be an international student. You could be a domestic student that is coming from outside the US, and we'd put you through the arrival testing protocol, which is you're going to do your 3-day pre-arrival test, a day 0, a day 3 to 5, and a day 7 test. And we're ready to do that testing. We're also going to recommend what I call aggressive symptomatic testing, meaning if there's a few, even mild symptoms, a sore throat, very mild stuffiness, things that seem like you might be getting sick, we're going to recommend that you contact health services and get a test, and that you stay in your room isolated until you can get a test. That might mean putting a mask on and going to get food and coming right back, or it might mean having friends bring you food. But that has worked well so far, and we're going to try to test aggressively for symptomatic testing. So testing will be available at health services. We will still have contact tracing, which was highly effective last year. We'll isolate cases. Quarantine's a little different this year with a highly vaccinated campus. The CDC guidance and Department of Health guidance on that is if someone is designated to be a close contact of a case and they're fully vaccinated, they simply have to wear a mask and get tested in 3 to 5 days, unless they start having symptoms, in which case we'd test them sooner. So we're going to follow that guidance as well. But for unvaccinated individuals, we're ready to quarantine those students. Again, that's not many students on campus, less than 1%. We will do post-exposure testing of asymptomatic vaccinated exposed individuals, as I just mentioned, and we're ready to pivot to what we call targeted dynamic testing if conditions warrant, meaning broader asymptomatic testing. And that's if we start seeing community transmission among our campus community, or if the cases start rising again in Addison County. We were very successful in doing that last year. We're ready to stand that up again if needed. And the place to get the most up-to-date information is on the campus status page, which is available off of the main Middlebury College website under the COVID information. Just look for campus status, and you can get all kinds of updates on where we are on masking, physical distance, testing, et cetera. At this point, I'll stop on COVID and pass to Professor Amy Morseman, who can tell us a little bit about academics.
Thank you, Dr. Peluso. And it's going to be a little about academics because though I'm on campus, I am having difficulty with Zoom on my computer. And so I had to go to my phone, but Zoom is going to suck the power all out of my phone in just a few minutes. So I'm going to be brief. I just want to say that you chose Middlebury as a liberal arts institution. So hopefully you're embracing liberal arts and the breadth of understanding and exploration that a liberal arts education provides. We're going to expose you to a range of courses, a range of options, and we're going to encourage you to find balance across a lot of different things you like, things you know, things you don't know. And that messaging is going to start in your first semester and is going to go through all your 4 years. I love first year seminars because they are an opportunity to learn foundational skills, to not know things and revel in not knowing things, but revel with others in growing and learning. And it's okay to not know because you're a first year, but to really build up those skills so that you can shine in other courses. There's an academic support panel tomorrow night that I think would be great for you to attend as well with first year seminar instructors. And also what's wonderful about first year seminars is that your instructor is your advisor, and your advisor meets with you many times across a year, and they will begin meeting with you next week during orientation to help you pick your courses so that you will feel good for your first semester. I just also want to remind you that you are first years. that older students have already registered, which means you are going to take the remainder seats, and lots of classes and such sections of classes have opened up for you, but you may not get your first choices. We're going to encourage you to have backups and backups and backups, and to keep an open mind, and to be willing to take a class you may not really want to take, but that's the spirit of the liberal arts. I'm going to stop there for now because I'm worried I'm going to run out on you. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Amy. So at this point, I know some folks have been putting some questions in the chat, but we're going to open it up. So don't be shy. You can use the anonymous function if you need. I think maybe in the meantime, while we wait for some questions to come in, someone that I always love hearing from, and I think is a big part of campus, is our Director of Dining, Dan DeTora. So I don't know, Dan, if you don't mind popping on your video and sharing just a little bit about what students should expect from their dining experience this year. And I think a lot of times some folks are interested about allergy information if they have different food allergies or needs. Maybe you could just do a little brief overview while folks are thinking of their questions.
Sure, thanks. And welcome to MID. As Amanda said, I am the Director of Dining Services. I am in charge of all things food on campus. We have 3 all-you-care-to-eat dining halls, meaning once a student goes in, he or she can pretty much have whatever they want, how much as they want, go up to the counter 10 times if they want. We also have 4 retail operations that provide coffee, snacks. We have a C-store that has various prepackaged items, some pharmaceutical items as well. As a freshman, as all students on campus are on an unlimited meal plan, meaning they can come and go into the dining halls as much as they want. So if you want to come to breakfast at 8:30 and then come back at 9:30, please do so. If you want to travel to one dining hall for dinner and then go to another and have dessert, more than welcome to do that. We also have a very robust to-go program as well. So if you feel like you're running to class and you're going to be a little late, we have reusable to-go containers that you can grab and stock up and bring that to class. We just ask that you bring them back. We are very excited for this year. Some of the COVID protocols have lightened up. We're looking forward to getting back to a little bit of normalcy with our dining program. Our menus are going to be different in all 3 dining halls, which is different from last year. So we're really excited about that. It's going to give a vast variety of food for the students this year. So the first couple of weeks will be crowded. I'm just letting everyone know. It takes a little while for students to get into the rhythm of the dining halls and to get into their classes and such. But after a couple of weeks, it settles in, and I think we have a good program that people will certainly enjoy. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Dan. And I'm looking at the chat, and so before we the Q&A, before we move too far away from food, someone asked, where can parents eat during move-in? And Dan and his staff are dear to my soul. And so do you want to answer that, Dan?
Sure. So Proctor and Ross Dining Hall are both going to be open for move-in, and parents are welcome to come into the dining hall. We do ask that for this year that you take the food to go and eat outside or in a location other than sitting inside with the students. So we will have compostable containers, and you're more than welcome to come into the dining hall and grab your food and taking it on to wherever you want to go. Great.
Thanks, Dan. So there are one question in the chat is a good one, a question about some repetitive information folks have heard. And so Amy, I'm going to tap you for this, but I also feel like my colleagues, Matt Longland and Barbara McCall, might have an interesting perspective on this as well. The message that we send often that students aren't going to necessarily get the classes that they want. And for me, I've worked here 9 years, and that's something that I hear every year. And it's just something that I think we often say for just to make sure people understand their expectations. But Amy, do you want to share a little bit more about what it looks like on the back end as folks as the academic side of the house is sort of sorting out how many classes are we offering and that sort of thing?
Know a number for how many classes we're offering, but I can tell you that the registrar's office has worked very hard this summer to ensure that there are enough seats, more than enough seats for all first years. They may not be exactly in the places where you want to be, okay? So if you are passionate about psychology and economics and really want a class in both of those areas semester, you might not get them. You might not get them exactly at the time or with the particular teacher you've heard is wonderful, okay? So this is where we ask you to keep an open mind and to come up with multiple options for your schedule and for your courses. And this is what you'll hear time again from your mid-due leaders and from your advisor, which is also your first year seminar instructor.
Great, thanks, Amy. I'd love to move over and introduce our Director of Residence Life, AJ Place. AJ, there's a few questions that I think you would be poised to answer in the chat. One is, are there organized programming for halls to meet each other, and are there RAs? And then stick around for another follow-up question in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Amanda. Good evening, everybody. AJ Place, he, him, his pronouns. I serve as the Associate Dean for Student Life and overseeing residential life on campus. We definitely have RAs. We have RAs that are located in the first year halls. There's 1 to 2 on every floor, depending on what the floor is and the size. And they are responsible for helping to really build community, for checking in on students, to connecting them to resources. They do a lot of different programming on campus that goes hand in hand with a lot of the programming that Amanda's team does and student activities. And so there will be a lot of things for your student to do. I feel like at Mid, there's never a lack of something to do. The calendar is always packed with different things. And so absolutely, you'll meet the RAs at move-in. They'll be at the check-in table and helping move belongings from cars. And so your student is welcome to connect with them on any questions, any resources that they might need, anything that happens to come up. They're there and they're well trained to help answer those questions and get folks to support. So yes, absolutely, they'll be on their floors and they will be planning lots of different things.
Great, thanks, AJ. And do you mind, could you share a little bit about storage outside of individual dorm rooms? The specific question is there a place outside of individual dorm rooms to store ski equipment? But I think this question comes up sometimes also for bikes and other random things that folks like to bring with them.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so we do, a lot of our residence halls do have a bike storage room on campus. And so we encourage folks to bring a lock if they want to lock their bike up on campus, whether it's outside, there's bike racks. And so sometimes students will store ski equipment in bike rooms. It is not a secure room. And so I would recommend storing skis in personal rooms under beds. There's lots of space under beds and things like that. But yes, there are bike storage rooms in a lot of our buildings. And so feel free to bring your bike. A lot of students have bikes on campus. There are bike racks outside of a lot of different buildings on campus, academic buildings, etc. So bring a lock, bring a bike, and you're welcome to do that.
Thanks, AJ. Lila is one of our student interns who's on the call. And Lila, I always feel like students have the inside scoop on what it actually means to store your belongings. And so I don't know if you have any pro tips or tricks to share with students and families, maybe even if you didn't implement them yourself, some things you saw other students do.
Sure. I saw a lot of people using, like, you can buy plastic bins with drawers in them that you can put under your beds, which I didn't use. I had like little shelves, lots of little bins for things, but the ones with the drawers are very helpful. And in terms of storing things under your bed, the beds are big enough, but you can also raise them up, not loft them, but just raise them. So I did that and I was able to fit so much stuff under my bed. So that's really helpful. Easy to move the beds as well.
Amazing. Great. Thank you, Lila. Someone else who's pretty familiar with residential life and services for students is Matt Longman. And Matt, I always love hearing how long you've been at the institution. So, well, we don't have too many questions in the Q&A. I was curious if you could give us a little deeper look and share how long you've been at Middlebury.
Reference. So my name is Matt Longman. I prefer he, him, his pronouns, and I'm a Middlebury alum from the class of '89. And I've also been on deck here at the college in various positions for about 27 years. And I've served as a student life dean for about 25 of those years. So I bring some pretty deep experience to the table. I'm actually broadcasting from my office here in Allen Hall, which is one of our first year halls, and the Student Life Dean's offices are very intentionally located proximate to the first year communities, and that's very intentional. We're here, accessible, available. Students can pretty much run any questions that they have by us. Our primary focus is increasingly about helping to support a student succeed, especially academically, in finding their course. So the questions about not getting into classes, that sort of thing, we work very closely with the first year seminar instructors and often in tandem with them. So the first year seminar instructor will be a primary advisor to a student in talking about a lot of the nitty gritty and course selections. And there will be a lot of support that incoming students will be receiving from the seminar instructor. But we're also here as an additional listening ear and support. We have students who understandably sometimes arrive with big thoughts, big hopes and aspirations. And back to that question from one of the folks on the Q&A, sometimes things don't get out of the gates ideally, or at least apparently ideally. And I can tell you, and this is not fiction, there are many times that I'll be working with a student where, as the first year progresses, they'll be looking back upon their start. And the start might have been an anxious one where they felt like my classes didn't work out the way I needed them to. And often what the student will share with me is, I'm actually really glad I ended up in the classes that I did end up in. So all way of just saying, welcome, thank you very much. And yes, I do bring some pretty deep Middlebury College knowledge to the table, which occasionally comes in handy.
Great. Thanks, Matt. I wanted to turn again, Amy, to you. There's a few other questions in the chat about, I'll read them directly in case you can't see them. I think you transitioned back to your computer, but just in case. When are students going to learn about their language and math placement exams? And then I have another one for you, but I'll have you answer that one first.
So any online placement exams since completed in August, late August, that was the deadline, August 27th, they should be hearing by the time they move in. So the idea is they're being evaluated if they're in, and then they'll get results to you by the 6th. If for some reason a student was delayed in a placement exam, then that might take a little bit longer, but they can always be in touch with the department who's evaluating it. Math does not do a placement exam. They just have a set of categories for this in high school, this is what you need in college kind of thing. And the one thing they're doing differently this year is, if you're trying to take Calc 1, intro calc, they're going to want to have a conversation with you at Academic Forum. Great place to go, drop in on Wednesday of next week, make the case why you should get Calc 1 as opposed to Calc 2 or some other class. Okay, so they're trying to preserve the introductory course for students who really need it, as opposed to students who've already in school and again. But all the information for both math and languages is on the placement exam, the new placement exam website that was built last spring.
Great, thanks, Amy. And I feel okay. I can hear what Amy's saying, but I do know you're cutting in and out. So I'm just looking to my colleagues to say, is this good? She's okay. Okay, I thought so too. Amy, one more question for you. How does the waitlist process work for classes? Do you attend each class that you're waitlisted for and talk to the professor? What's the scoop?
So we tell students if they want to get on the wait list to email a professor right away when they couldn't get into the class to sort of get on that wait list. It really depends upon what the professor tells them, but it's always a good idea if you can to go to that class like in the first week. But of course, you can't be going to like 10 different classes, right? So at some point, you have to decide, this isn't working for me, but you can always be sort of persistent with the professor and email them every couple. Where am I on the wait list now? Because definitely going to be some shifting in the first week of the semester. So persistent, be patient, be communicative.
Great, thanks, Amy. I'm going to just mix it up a little bit. I know there's a few more academic focus classes, but Dan, I see you're answering, but I think it's good to hear for folks. How are nut allergies handled in the dining halls in terms of cross-contamination?
Thanks. I'll stop answering in the Q&A. Do it live here. We too are very concerned about nut allergies, and we take it very seriously. We do not put nuts in a lot of different things in our dining halls. If we do have nuts, it's typically just for peanut butter. We do grind our own homemade peanut butter on campus, and students love it, but we do that in an area that is basically in a basement away from the normal dining operation. So we do try to keep that as far away from normal dining operations. We do label everything. Everything has a label on it, which is much different than most schools. We label every single ingredient. So students are fully aware of what is in the item. If not, we recommend that you ask. We have chefs and servery workers roaming around the dining halls at all time. All of them do take a allergy class that we provide to them, so they are well aware of cross-contamination and those sorts of things. We do have certain allergy-free areas as well, with refrigerators that are nut-free, gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free. So we suggest that students seek out those areas. And if students have questions, they can email me directly, and I'd be happy to tour any dining hall with them, and we can review it if they're not comfortable. So.
Thanks, Dan. And I'll just say, Dan often replies very quickly to my emails. It's always shocking how quickly he replies. So I trust that that is true. One other question that I think just went to the answer. So now somebody's beating me to it and I'm all off track, but was about AP credits. And Amy, I'm sure you guys will touch on this tomorrow, but in case people can't make the panel tomorrow night, could you just touch on AP credits or pre-college programs and how folks can share that information with the registrar's office?
So when students took the AP exams, the option to have the college board send those reports to Middlebury. So if you checked that box, scores have already gone to Middlebury. They've already been processed by the registrar's office, and they will be in your advisor's notes about you. So you can, but you can also check with the registrar once you get here. Did those get read or not, kind of thing. And I put his name in the queue as a contact person in the registrar's office. There are other pre-college testing credits, IB, there's information about all of them in the FYS registration booklet, which so you can go back to that book. In fact, your students should bring it to campus, use it a lot during orientation.
That's great. Thanks, Amy. And I noticed we had some transfer students on the call earlier, and one pro tip that the registrar has shared with us and was emailed out to students earlier was to bring, if you're a transfer student, bring some of your syllabi from your past institutions if you still have them. If you don't, if you can contact previous professors. Sometimes when you arrive, it's helpful for chairs to see what it is that you've actually studied in order to make sure you get credit if you need more credit. So another pro tip on transferring some of those credits if you've taken courses elsewhere. I'm going to answer briefly, and I might see if Lila wants to chime in, but so somebody asked, when will the buddy assignments go out? My child signed up but did not receive anything. So I think you are thinking about the SGA has a buddy program in which they're connecting students together. They have not sent those out yet, so don't worry, we haven't forgotten you. You're not the one person without a buddy. You will be all right. So they'll mostly be sending out probably the week of orientation, and there's actually an orientation event during the first weekend, which we're calling New Student Weekend, where people will be able to meet their buddies in person. So don't panic if you haven't seen that, it's coming. All right, I'm gonna say, I know that oftentimes, I know AJ, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. I know there's no questions in this moment. Our folks on the back end are doing such a great job. But I think residents, I'll just speak for myself. I have a stepdaughter who is moved to college this fall. And the biggest thing on her mind was, who am I living with? How am I going to manage this? I oh, I don't want to live with somebody. That was her attitude. She was not excited about it. And that's totally fine. Wherever you're at is fine. So AJ, I don't know if you wanted to share any wisdom or talk about some roommate stuff or res hall stuff, lounges, kitchens, whatever. I know I'm sure you get lots of questions. So what do you feel like is most pertinent?
Yeah, absolutely, Amanda. I think you know me well enough to know that I can always talk about res halls and talk about what my team helps with. And so yeah, let's talk building wise. So we have, just to give a quick overview for folks, and this is primarily for new students, but I'm happy to talk about transfer students and where they're living as well. So for new students, we have 5 residence halls that first year students will be in, and that's Stewart, Hepburn, Battelle, Allen, and Coffrin. And they're in essentially 2 clusters on either side of campus. And one of the really great things about our program here at Middlebury is that housing assignments actually go first based on first year seminar. And so Amy and her team does their magic of placing students in first year seminars, and then they send us a list, and then we do housing within that. So for students, where they're living, they're going to have their room, but then they're also going to have folks in class with them that are near them or in their same building or in their same cluster. And then the third part of this is that their dean assignments. So we've heard from Matt about all the student support that deans can do. The third component is their dean will also be assigned to them based on where they're living. And so within their housing cluster, so for example, Stewart and Hepburn is one cluster, and Battelle, Allen, and Coffrin is the other cluster. They will have both first year seminar classmates, and they will have their dean right there in that general area. And so that's a really exciting thing that I think we do at Middlebury, is we pair all of those so that there's some true built-in support when students get here, and they'll get to meet their first year seminar classmates, their faculty, their dean, all those great things. And those folks will all be closely near them in proximity, like physical proximity. So that's pretty exciting. All our first year res halls have lounges. Most of them, all of them actually have kitchens. And so students want to bring their ramen, and they want to bring their homemade food to make, or their mac and cheese, some of the popular things that students like to make. They are welcome to bring food with them and cook in the kitchens. We see that a lot as small group activities or floor activities. We also know that like cooking really helps us remind us of home. And so sometimes just doing something and having something that they can bring and prepare, even if it's just mac and cheese, can feel nice to be doing that in their space. They do need to bring their own cooking supplies. And so encourage, if there's a pot and some utensils, feel free to supply them with those types of things. But there are kitchens in the res halls. There are lounges. A lot of the lounges have TVs, game systems, ping pong or foosball, pool tables, all those kind of things. There's some pianos around as well in some of the lounges, and so students will also usually, we can hear them playing and things like that. And so those lounges in the residence halls are used for both social activity, studying, all different types of things. In your room, just because we get a lot of questions about rooms, and the vast majority of first year students will be in doubles, which we actually hear from the most students about wanting to be in a double and wanting to have a roommate. And I think sometimes that alleviates some social anxiety, right? Like, okay, I already know one other person because here's my roommate, and I get to chat with them ahead of time. And we will certainly have some students in singles, but the vast majority of first years and transfer students will be in doubles, and there will be some transfer students in doubles and singles in a mix. The transfer students, just to talk a little bit about where they live, is we place them generally with their class year. So if they're an incoming sophomore student, they were placed in a sophomore building. If they are an incoming junior or a senior upper class student, they are placed in a junior senior building. So we do place them appropriately so they have some ability to connect with other folks in their class year. So in the rooms, there's desks, there's beds, there's wardrobes or closets, there's usually bookcases and shelves. The beds, as Lila mentioned earlier, are adjustable, so you can adjust those height-wise, and they can go pretty high to what's called a captain's height. And you can also bunk your beds. And so if your students get here and they feel like, I need more room, I can't fit anything, well, one, maybe they're bringing a lot too much stuff, but that's for everybody to decide on how much stuff that is. But if they feel like they need to bunk their beds, they can submit that through facilities as well. There's also vending machines in a lot of our res halls, and along with all the great food that Dan and his team supply, there's not a lack of food on campus either. So don't worry about that. I don't know if that covered. I feel like I talked there for a while, so I'll pause and see if there's anything else that came out of that I can help answer.
AJ, I think that was great. 2 res hall related questions. how many freshmen or first year students are living in Coffrin?
Yeah, there are about just about 50 first year students in Coffrin. And Coffrin is actually a building we have used for first year students for a very long time. As long as I've been at Middlebury, usually every year we do have some first years in Coffrin. And so that is pretty typical. They will also have an RA that's specific to them. They're all on floors together. There's 3 floors in one column. Coffrin is a unique building where it has kind of 3 different columns. They're kind of stacked. And so one full column of Coffrin out of the 3 is first year students.
Awesome. Thanks, AJ. I know from past orientations and questions that oftentimes another topic that folks are curious about, but sometimes not so sure how to ask, is just about alcohol and substances on campus. And so I'm going to turn to my colleague, Barbara McCall, to share a little bit of information about alcohol and substances on campus.
Thanks, Amanda. That's a really good question. And I think that's a question that a lot of folks have, but like you said, maybe aren't sure how to ask or don't think that it's okay to ask. And many students and many families have sort of a picture of college, maybe what it was like when they were there or what it's like in the movies. And I think when it comes to talking about substances, it's really important to know that about 1/3 of our new students are non-substance users. It's not really a narrative or a story that gets amplified in the media, doesn't always make the text messages that come through at the end of a weekend, but we have a significant portion of our students who don't use substances at all, and an equally significant section of our students who are low substance users. We have a really budding and exciting group on campus of low and no substance use students, particularly in last year's first year and sophomore class, who are getting institutional support to organize their own programming or sort of rewriting the scripts for what happens at night on weekends. And we're really excited about that. We also have a lot of support services on campus for students who have questions or are interested in shifting their relationship with substances. Maybe they'd like to use less. Maybe they've had some experiences that they're trying to make meaning or sense of. And we have confidential health educators who meet with students to talk about a variety of substances and experiences so students can figure out what relationship is right for them, what aligns with their goals and values, and what will be supportive to them both socially and academically. So we're really excited to welcome all of our students and to have open, honest, and student-driven conversations about the role of substances or not the role of substances in their Middlebury experience.
And Barbara, just a follow-up question from the chat. What is a low substance user?
Oh, great question. So we have a lot of students who are interested in substances, and maybe if they use, for example, for alcohol, they might have one drink or a part of a drink. I think there are a lot of assumptions that for students who use alcohol or cannabis or other substances, whether they're 21 or not, that the only way to use substances is to use them a lot, many days a week, and that when they do use, they have a lot of it. And there are students who are experimenting, seeing what feels right to their bodies. And I think there's a lot of students who are choosing low or no use for a variety of really, really great reasons, based on family history, based on the medications they take that help their brains and their bodies feel confident and comfortable, based on cultural values, or based on choices to prioritize their academic or athletic performance during their time with us.
Great. Thanks so much, Barbara. I did just want to I didn't talk about my area, and I'm talking the most, so I thought I should talk some more. I just wanted to share that within student life that we have on campus over 150, and I think our number is really closer to 170, 175 student organizations. And I know Derek mentioned this briefly. A common question we get is, how do I join? What's available? And so I'm going to plug 2 things. The first is Middlebury has an engagement platform called Mid Presence. So towards the end, I'll put a link in the chat for folks, but it has a listing of every student organization. It also houses a lot of our departments. And so this is a place where students can go. You can literally click a button that says join. And you can also just see when like common meetings times are for certain organizations, which is great. You can also look forward to the Student Involvement Fair, which will be the second week of classes, the 21st. I'm like, I hope I didn't get that wrong. I'm pretty sure that's correct. It's a Tuesday. It's a really fun time. It will be an outdoor event, but there will be lots of folks. So people will be wearing their masks. So we encourage you to look forward to that and to get involved on campus as you come to Middlebury. It's a great time to try something new that you've never tried before, or stick with some old hobbies, if that's applicable to you. The last thing I just wanted to mention, and I'm just looking to some colleagues to see, and maybe I'm trying to figure out who might want to do this. Maybe Derek, I don't know if you want to chime in, but one of our colleagues couldn't join us tonight. Her name was Janae Dew, and she works in the Anderson Freeman Resource Center. And the Anderson Freeman Resource Center is an office on campus that really is here to support students of marginalized identities and low-income students. And they do great things as far as building community on campus and being a support system for folks. So I just wanted to mention that that is a resource for students. Janae couldn't make it because she is spearheading the First at Mid orientation program, which is for first gen students who are coming on Thursday, actually. So I am just gonna look to my colleagues and say, what else should we say? What am I missing that would be important from that group that we might want to share out with our guests?
Just add, Amanda, one of the great things. What's up?
You sound like Darth Vader, and it's not good.
I can take a little stab at it. As the person who is the newest to this campus, I'll take a stab, and maybe by then Derek can come back from being Darth Vader to Derek Doucette. I think what I would want to start by saying is, at Middlebury, one of our fundamental principles of the way we approach work is from a place of thinking about inclusion and equity. We've shifted in higher education from thinking about creating specialized programs for underrepresented students from marginalized identities and thinking about their experiences in those siloed ways. Where we have moved to, and where Middlebury is really committed to, is thinking about how all students feel that they can really engage in learning and teaching one another about issues around identities, about issues around inclusion and equity. We are no longer an institution that is just interested in celebrating our numbers around diversity and welcoming students from diverse backgrounds. While that is still very important to us, what we are more compelled to and inspired and motivated to do is to ensure that the campus that our students are coming into, no matter from what background, feels like it is a place where they belong, feels like it is thinking about the work we do and the learning that our students do from an equity and inclusion lens. So again, I feel like I can't speak in the depth around the offerings that the Anderson Freeman Center offers, but what I can say is they provide, and I think all of the folks on this panel really are committed to working around and working from a lens of equity and inclusion. We think about that in all of our work, from health and well-being with Barbara and folks who are on this call that are thinking about student health, to our residential spaces and my colleagues in residence life, like AJ, to even dining. You may not think that, but I think it's important to think about equity, inclusion, and diversity in all aspects of our work. We also do specialized trainings and programs for students. The bottom line for us is, for students, we want you to feel like you can enter and engage in these conversations wherever you are. Some of you are going to come into Middlebury not having had these conversations at all. Some of you probably have had these conversations and facilitated and led them and could probably be an expert panelist. And then many of you are somewhere in the middle. But our hope is, no matter where you enter this conversation, you feel that you have a voice, you feel that you can talk about your experiences, and again, learn and teach one another. I always say that when I talk about equity and inclusion, I am both a teacher and a learner. And while I have not worked with these colleagues that I have in the Zoom panel with me, I know that those are the values that they also embody. Derek, I don't know if you're back from being Darth Vader, but I don't know if there's anything specific that you might also want to add.
Well, I don't know if I'm back either. Maybe someone can give me a thumbs up if it's better. Okay, good, great. In that spirit, Smita, I was going to share that one of the interesting things that colleagues in the Anderson Freeman Center do is collaborate with Amanda and her team on student organizations focused on various cultural affinity groups on campus. And one of the things that those groups do is not only do they create a space where folks who share a particular affinity gather, but they also facilitate campus events that celebrate those particular identities and invite other members of the community in a really interesting and inclusive way. And so it really speaks a little bit to the spirit of what you were sharing, and it's wonderful. It's exciting. There are a number of annual campus events that everyone looks forward to that occur in that way, and so they're really highlights of the year.
Great, thanks everybody. We do have a question in the chat. Because Vermont gets darker earlier and for longer hours in the winter, does the lack of sunshine affect students? Which I think is a great question. And I'm going to go to Barbara to answer that one.
This is a great question. We do have shorter days and longer periods of darkness in the winter. And as a native New Englander, I thought I knew all about winter until I moved to Vermont and started working at Middlebury. There is no other community that I have been a part of that embraces winter as openly and as enthusiastically as Middlebury College. For students who are looking for interventions, we do have some of those amazing light boxes that students can sit in front of. There are some spread out all over campus. We have some in counseling. We also do run some groups and psychoeducation opportunities around managing the winter blues and some of the things that can come up for folks around that time of year. But truly, Amanda and her colleagues create so many opportunities for students to get outside, to try new things, and to embrace winter in ways that are truly magical. It's a little bit like a winter wonderland up here. And so I would invite you to encourage students to get outside, to try things, and to speak up. If things are feeling hard and it seems to be related to darkness or related to winter, there's a lot of staff members who will be ready and willing to support them, to offer resources, and to help them get out and get involved.
Yeah, and I'll just mention a few resources for folks who are coming from, well, even if you're coming from what you think is a cool place to Middlebury, as Barbara's experience was, that a few things I want to mention. One is you don't have to know how to ski to be part of the Middlebury community. I think sometimes that's something that folks feel like, I don't know how to do this, and what's that going to be like for me? I'm not a skier and I still really enjoy winter. And even if you haven't learned how to ski and that's something you want to do, there are often free lessons over J-term over at the Snow Bowl, which is the Middlebury College ski area. And you can get PE credit for participating in those. And there are discounts on rentals and lessons for students. We also have on campus something called the Gear Room, which is for students who maybe you want to try snowshoeing or you want to go for a long walk and you need a bigger backpack or something. There is gear and equipment available to rent for free to students. There's a late fee, but there's not a gear to use it or a charge to use it to begin with. And then there's lots of introductory programs or programs that can help students just like learn the area a little bit through the Middlebury Outdoor Programs Office, as well as the Middlebury Mountain Club. And what I loved about the Middlebury Mountain Club this past year, we couldn't travel too far. They were really digging into like what's around in our local resources right here in Addison County. And there were so many things that people could do outside. So you also don't necessarily need a car to participate in those activities. And there's lots of different entry points. And so I would just advise, don't worry if that's not something that you're passionate about. That's not something that has to be a part of your experience. But if it's something that you choose and you want to dabble in, there's lots of opportunities to get to know. And the last thing I'll say, I don't know if I can find the link during this video, but our director of outdoor programs last year put together a kind of silly, but also very informative video about how to find cheap but durable winter clothing that works really well. And so You don't need all the designer things. There's lots of things, even just you can buy really great gloves in the hardware store. And so this video, we'll try to send it out. I think we might have sent it out actually in one of our most recent orientation emails. And so go back and check those. But for those who are thinking about packing, something for folks to look at.
Layers. That's the rule. Layers. Don't get the fancy $500 coat. Layers is what you need to do, and good thick socks and a hat and some gloves.
That's great. While we're on here, to what extent do we need super warm clothing? I don't know the answer to that. I feel like, Derek, do you want to chime in on that one? You know things about super warm clothing.
I think Amy just gave the best possible answer.
Okay.
Lots of individual layers are far more useful and far more versatile than one giant puffy coat. I mean, a giant puffy coat is nice, but not when it's 40 degrees instead of 10 degrees. And so Amy gave the best answer we could have gotten to that question.
Perfect. All right. This seems like a good question. I'm going to give a little warning to our crowd here that I think if you have one lingering question, to put it on in, and maybe we'll start wrapping up. But I think I love this question. And so Lila, something you wish someone had told you when you were first year, or maybe before you came, or what's something you learned in your first year as maybe a way to phrase that?
This isn't something new. This is literally, I feel like everyone tells college freshmen this, but just to remember, like, everyone being kind of in the same boat. It's just so scary, like the idea of having to go like meet a whole new group of people, to meet new people. I was like, Lila, you're gonna go stand in the line for the dining hall and you're gonna talk to the person in front of you and you're gonna like go get a meal with them or something. Obviously you don't have to like be that obnoxious, but talking to people who live near you, I became really close with a lot of like my neighbors, joining all sorts of like clubs, even if it sounds just remotely interesting, then you can meet someone, you'll see them around. You're gonna see everyone around. Pretty basic, but important.
Okay, great. And before we sign off, I'm not seeing any new questions. I know that a lot of the questions that we're getting in the orientation inbox are just double checking, like what are all the pre-arrival, what am I supposed to do regarding COVID and my tests, and just the extra layer. I just want to recognize there's an extra layer of thought that you folks coming to campus have to give right now, on top of just like, I'm moving, which is really stressful. So Derek, do you mind just plugging in one more time where people can find the most up-to-date information and where they can point their questions?
Yeah, absolutely, Amanda. And I just actually put some instructions about it in the chat. But excuse me, I would recommend that the first thing people do is go to middlebury.edu and click on the essential information link at the top of the page. And that will lead them to a menu of some really valuable resources. And the first thing that folks should get used to checking on a regular basis is known as the campus status page. The campus status page is kept updated on a real-time basis with all of the various COVID mitigation measures that are in place and the expectations we have of students for following them. And the good news is that they are considerably less restrictive than they were last year. That's fantastic. We hope that trajectory continues. We expect that it will, at least after the arrival period, which will be a little more tightly controlled, just so we make sure we get off to a safe and healthy start. But getting used to watching that campus status page is one of the most important things you can do. Also on that menu, you'll find a link to the Fall Campus Guide. And this is a longer, more in-depth and more detailed document that talks about all of the COVID-related expectations and mitigation measures and policies that are in place. The Campus Status Guide, think of it as like the one-stop shop for up-to-date changing information, and the Fall Guide is that foundational information, the bedrock that we don't actually expect to change very much. So getting in the habit of making sure that you check the campus status page and familiarizing yourself with the Fall Campus Guide before you get here is really important. And then finally, we have put out a boatload of information in recent announcements. And also on that essential essential information page, that same menu that you can get to easily from this college's homepage, is an archive of all the recent announcements that we've sent out. And so if you missed one or you don't remember what one said exactly, you can go back and look at all of them there. So between those three things, you should be in good shape to get most of your questions answered.
Great. Thanks so much, Derek. I'm just gonna one more time throw it over to Smita and before we close it up.
Great. And I'm sorry, my little boy is just coming to say good night. This is Rohan, class of 2039. We're gonna make that up. Say hi.
Hi, Rohan.
Welcome to Middlebury. All right. I just wanted to close and just say we are so excited to welcome you to our campus. In the short 5 weeks that I've been here, 3 of which have been in person, let me add, I have found this campus to be so warm, inviting, and filled with people who are smart, who are deeply invested, and most of all, who care about this community. So we are excited. We have a lot of information, as Derek just pointed out, around COVID that we want you to pay attention to. We want you to know, especially the parents and family members on this call. You'll probably go to it more than sometimes your students, but that's what it's there for. But I also want you to think about how you think about entering this special time in your life and put COVID aside for just a minute to celebrate this important milestone. I want to say thank you to the parents and family members. You have a big role to play in bringing your student where they are today. So I hope students, you take a moment to really express gratitude for your parents and family members. I would also say, I'm going back to the question that we asked Lila in terms of advice for first-year students. And students, you'll hear from me throughout the year, but I would like to share 4 things that I say to my toddler, who you just saw every day when I drop him off at daycare, because I think that advice also applies to you. And it's by no way saying that you are a 4-year-old, but I think that advice is really important. So there are 4 things that I say to my toddler every day, and they are: be curious, be a good listener, be kind, and most of all, have fun. And I think that applies to thinking about your time here. And I think the only addendum I would add is check your email, because we do send official information through your email. So please check your email. I can't say that to my 4-year-old. But I hope that in this stressful time with COVID and the Delta variant, take some moments where you can savor this important life milestone, and know that change, even when it's for the positive, can be stressful, but take as much time to savor those moments with one another, with your family of loved ones, and we'll be waiting for you right here when you come to campus. So.
Thank you, Smita. So we're wrapping up our time together, and we just want to thank you all for all the great questions and for all your flexibility and getting all the information that you need and advocating for yourselves to make sure you have what you need to get here. Our orientation team will be working on posting a recording of this to our orientation website. So if you have friends or somebody who couldn't come, feel free to point them to our website. And then we'll work on having questions in the chat put into some sort of FAQ on our website as well. Of course, if you have any follow-up questions, you are welcome to email us at midview@middlebury.edu. And in the meantime, we just say good luck packing, travel safe, and we look forward to meeting you. Good night.